Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Game 3 of the Women's World Chess Championship, Wenjun versus Zhongyi. Today was an incredible game, 5 hours of play, which I'm going to condense into hopefully about 10-15 minutes. Two brilliant moves, a couple of great moves. These players played exceptional chess. It was a joy to behold, a joy to watch. And if you haven't seen the game, it's incredible. Zhongyi does lead the match, 1.5 to a half. She took the lead in the previous game, in Game 2, where Wenjun made an inexplicable blunder in an endgame, and she's normally such a good endgame player. And that is on display today, where they play a really long endgame. What do you expect when they play for 5 hours? So we go to the game. It's Game 3. Wenjun's got the white pieces again, and we have a repeat of the first game, except here. So you can play an open Sicilian, where we get this, and this. Oh, not the rook, the knight. And this was what we got in the first game, where we didn't go for like 4 knights Sicilian. So Wenjun changes it up. She plays c4. We get now knight to c6 and d4. So we still get this, but now we get like a Morozzi bind kind of structure, which can be quite useful. But it does allow this bishop check. We block with the knight. And knight to e7, not knight to f6. Bishop to e2 and d5. Striking back in the center, takes, and we take on c6 and we castle. So far, players haven't spent too much time. Wenjun did think a little bit after the move knight g to e7. She may have been expecting knight to f6, but she proceeded with bishop to e2, simple developing move. Zhongyi spent a little bit of time perhaps recalling, perhaps just writing the moves down, playing d5, and then big decision for Wenjun whether to take or to castle right away. She decided to take once, and then to take twice, which she didn't spend much time at all, and then castled. Castles. Black obviously also deciding to castle because Black does have a few other moves. You can think about taking the knight on c3. You can also consider here playing a5. Taking space on the queen side, perhaps winning again with this plan with the bishop, like in the first game that they played with these colors. But yes, castles. Takes, and now we get the bishop going over, pinning the pawn to the rook. We now will not unpin the pawn, but we defend the pawn, and then bishop developing to g5, which Wenjun did consider. You can see she spent a few minutes on that. Takes, and rook to c8. And now Wenjun's got some decisions to make, and she elects to play queen to a4. And you can see she's down on time again, and this has been a theme in the first two matches. Wenjun has been down a lot of time in these games. But time today, thankfully, wasn't too much of a factor, although they were playing narrowly with the time, but no one lost because of time, I don't think. Anyway, h6 kicks out the bishop, and we retreated back to d2, defending the pawn. And now a very interesting move, a5. Well, because the pawn was hanging on a7, so you push it forward, carefully considered. Rook fe1, rook to c4. Had to expect this was coming, so we slide the queen back. And now knight to f5. And this is really the problem. Zhongyi has equalized again comfortably with the black pieces. Wenjun hasn't really posed problems with her white pieces in these first two games in the opening. Like, this is still an interesting position. It's still a very interesting pawn structure. So we both have a pawns, but you've got the c for d imbalance. Now, if this d pawn vanished, white is winning. These a pawns cancel out. This pawn could become a problem. This pawn, if it's by itself, could still be blockaded. It's still central enough. So we will see. Anyway, the bishop kicks out the rook slides back, and we play rook ad1. Queen comes forward, offering a queen trade. Now here, the best move according to the engine is to take the queen. And we would get this. But you are now allowing the knight in here, and Wenjun perhaps doesn't want to trade queens. You know, you've got to play like f3 to not allow the knight here. The knight can still go there. You can play a4, really clamping down on the queen side. If I can get the English to English. So instead, she takes the pawn, gets hit with the rook, and then we go to b4. As black, you cannot trade queens. You cannot trade queens. Because this pawn is now a permanent problem. You can see the advantage climbing. The longer you let the engine think. Because this pawn is well blockaded. Yes, this will fall. This is a problem. This pawn, where it's 4 squares away from queening, is going to be a problem for the rest of the game. So you cannot trade queens. So we take there. I should clarify, don't trade queens and allow the pawn to become a b pawn. You can, however, allow yourself to be taken, but after you get hit with the bishop, you slide back. You get hit again, we slide over, and now we offer a rook trade. Rooks double. We bring the bishop back, offering queens to be traded. Queens still aren't getting traded. And now h3, queen f6, rook e1, rook c8, putting pressure on this pawn as much as we can. And now, lovely move here, bishop to e5, hits the queen, forces it over to g5 rather. And here, a very important move as we get bishop to a6, rook over, bishop slides over, queen slides over. We threaten basically with a repetition, the position repeating itself. Here, ladies and gentlemen, there is some amazing stuff that happens because you can see time was whittled down. They are approaching move 40. They've maneuvered their pieces. It's still very much equal. It is still very much equal, but Wenjun is kind of pressing this a little bit. She is managing to kind of cause Zhongyi a bit of problems, but there is a way out. There is a way out here. Bishop takes d5. Wenjun spending a lot of time. Look at that. She's down to 6 minutes, but she only has to make another 3 moves. Zhongyi here spends a lot of time. She's got 26 minutes and 50 seconds. She spends 12 minutes and 53 seconds because there's only one move here to find for black. I'm looking at the top 3 engine lines right now. There is one and only one move. It is our first brilliant move of the video, knight to e3. It doesn't look like it should be possible. And here Wenjun has to carefully consider options. So what is the main problem? This is not mate. Firstly, the bishop is protecting that. Before you look at that, we are attacking the knight. But you say, what happens if I take this? Well, then I can take this. And now I am threatening mate. So you've got to play something like e4. At which point we get like bishop a8. And the game continues. Knight to e3. It attacks the rook. And it attacks the bishop, which is a big defender of that square. And you really need that bishop. So, Wenjun here, pretty quickly, because she saw this coming. It's weird. You see a brilliant move. Normally when you get hit with that, you're like, what? That's not possible. She saw it coming. h4. And it's the most interesting way to play without the pieces getting traded off in another manner. And then we get queen to g4. Zhongyi here did consider f takes e3. Not f takes e3. Oops, sorry about that. Instead of queen to g4, she considered knight takes d5. And then pawn takes, knight takes, rook here, queen, bishop over. And she wasn't sure if this was better or what to play in this position. She got to this position in her head and she got a little bit stuck. Because the rook can't really go to the c file. That b pawn's a problem. White's up a pawn in this scenario. So it's a real problem. So we get knight to e4. We get h4 as in the game. But we don't get knight takes d5 then. We get queen to g4. Which means all the pieces get traded. We move the rook out the way. And we get this. White is up a pawn. It is opposite colored bishops. Which tend to be very drawish. But with rooks on the board and an extra pawn for white, this is a position that Wenjun can massage and play for a long time. They've just got past move 40. You can see they're going to get their extra time now, I think. Rook a8. Bishop slides back and bishop to e6. I don't know why they haven't got extra time. Either that they used it. You know, there's the extra time. I don't know why it only kicks in on move 43. But anyway. There's the extra time for white. Rook to d6. King slides over, we bring the bishop back. So you've got to ensure you protect this, and you've got to try and cause as many problems. White needs a second weakness. They need to create a second weakness, a second problem for black to deal with. It's an endgame principle. You need 2 things to play with. So we've got this passed pawn. If this is the only pawn on the board, it's probably a draw. So you need to create something. You need to create threats on the king. You need to undermine the pawn structure. You need something to play with. Black is still very much defending despite being a pawn down. King d7 kicks out the rook. And we're going to push the pawns forward. But look at this. Perfect technique from Wenjun. They've got plenty of time now. We're bringing the king. We bring the king forward. g3, rook check, and we slide the rook back, and it looks like you can't really make progress. You can. It's just going to take a lot of time and effort. As we get all the way here, the pawn starts rolling. Bishop d5. And that's not the great move. But what's even worse is right here. Tanjani is in that position again. There are only really 2 moves that hold, and only really 1 that you need. And that you need to play is rook e2. You need to play rook e2. Control this file, keep pressure on this pawn, don't allow the king in. You need to play rook e2. And then we will get king g5. And then you will play rook e4. You will hit the bishop, paralyzing it a little bit, because the rook is stuck. The rook will have to move. It can't really. There's no way you can go without protecting the bishop. So the bishop can go here, maybe. But then you've got checks, we trade, and this would be a draw. If you get the rooks off the board, it's a draw. But king to f4, and we get bishop to c6, which is a problem. It is a mistake for 1 move only. Wenjun finds it. King to g5, rook a4 now, but you can't trade the rooks because we can give a check. And we can get our rook out of the way. We aren't able to trade rooks, and we're able to defend our pawn, and now Wenjun is winning. King to e5, the rook goes to the back rank. We are going to harass the bishop because it's the only piece really protecting the pathway and the promotion square, which is the one silver lining for Tanjani. Rook to c2, king to h8, king f6, rook back to the first rank, rook to c4, rook d6, and it looks like we're repeating. No, we're not repeating. We're finding our time, f3, and now Wenjun admits she knows she is winning. It is completely winning for white. It is going to take time. Move 73 now. Hours and hours of play. Rook c4. The pawn keeps going closer. Rook c2. King g7. g5. Takes. King takes g5. Maybe one last trick could have been to play this, h4. Because if takes, now you can get your rook here, and you can maybe start causing a few more problems. Maybe this would have been one last trick to try. It's still +5. It's still completely winning. But king takes g5. The bishop goes in. We're now getting our pawn as close as possible. It's made it to c7. Rook c3. Bishop attacks the rook. You might say, isn't this winning? It's not. Because of rook takes e6. You fall into one last trap. You can come back, but then my rook will protect itself and it'll be all fine. Because that bishop was targeting the promotion square. So you can't now leave the c file with your rook. So rook c5 and rook a6. Black is trying, Tanjani is trying. She has one last throw of the dice, h4. Wenjun, cold-blooded, calm, and collected with 43 seconds on the clock. Check. Rook f6 check. Now you can take the pawn. The bishop comes in. h5. Rook c5. The bishop is under attack, but you can ignore it and bust out h6. Double exclamation point. Brilliant move. The plan is very simple. Check here, and you promote. You might say, but I can go here. I go here. There's nothing you can do. I'm promoting. And I don't even know, is that the best move? Oh, rook takes e6. Pawn takes, king here. You can try and go here. I'll promote. And when all is said and done, this is a winning endgame for white. So h6 would have been fitting if it was the final move, but we still got bishop to c8. But then h7, and there's nothing you can do. Tanjani resigns. On my feed, the king accidentally went there, but that's because they would have put the kings on those squares to signify that white has won the game. Wenjun levels the score going into game 4 tomorrow. She will have the black pieces against Tanjani. Will Tanjani be able to strike back? And just like a synopsis, this endgame was played brilliantly. Wenjun given an accuracy of 94%. Tanjani, to her credit, 89%, which is not as high as you would expect from a world championship. it was an incredibly difficult endgame. Opposite colored bishops, which tend to favor the attacking side normally because the light squared bishop can't defend against the dark squared bishop. The dark squared bishop can't defend against the light squared bishop. So it creates that interesting dynamic. And with rooks on the board, that one pawn advantage that she had, it was a draw for so long. And she had a drawing mechanism there. She just makes one mistake in the whole game. And she loses, unfortunately, a couple inaccuracies along the way. Wenjun, despite that brilliant move, knight e3, able to continue. We traded the queens and they just kept playing and playing. She knew she could squeeze it. And it makes this move, if we cut back, this move in game 2, all the more crazy that this happened. She said she wasn't in form. She's now back in form. And we've got a heck of a world championship to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was fantastic.